Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jay here, and I hope you guys are all having a great, fantastic day. Welcome back to another episode of Take 2. Today we're taking a look at the Elac Navis ARB-51 active loudspeakers that Gordon Brockhouse reviewed on April 1st, 2019. I think that review was on fire, and he even compared it to a speaker that cost 3 times more than the Elac Navis. The Navis also won the Reviewer's Choice Award and was selected as a Product of the Year for 2019. So if you're interested in that review, make sure to go read it at soundstagesimplify.com or by clicking on the link below this video. Now, the Elac Navis speakers are not first-time visitors in my listening space. They've been here before, and so when I was asked to review it again the second time on SoundStage, I was all for it because I always love revisiting products a second time. And also, I was curious if my opinion of them changed a little bit or if I would find new things about the Elac Navis this time around. Now, I don't think my opinion of them has changed at all. I still find them to be a great deal for $2,000 a pair, and personally think this may be one of the best speakers Andrew Jones has ever designed to date in terms of value. Now, I say in terms of value because I heard some of Andrew's higher end speakers when he was with TAD, and they were fantastic on a different degree, but for a lot more money. Elac Navis is a three-way design. The tweeter and mid-range is a coaxial design, which basically means the 1-inch soft dome tweeter is in the middle of the 4-inch aluminum mid-range driver. Then we have a 5.25-inch aluminum woofer for the bass. Now, I really like the design because I always find dual concentric or coaxial designs to be really good with imaging, timing, and most of the time it is more seamless than other designs. So what do I mean by seamless? You probably heard of drivers are more seamless instead of hearing each of the drivers separately. And one good way to achieve that is to have the drivers close to each other as much as possible. And as you can see, it doesn't get much closer than a coaxial design. Now, Andrew designed a lot of good speakers for Elac at relatively affordable prices, but most of them were passive speakers until the Navis came out. And it is my personal belief that when an engineer gets to design the amplifier portion of the speaker, that's when they can really dial things down to make it sound like what they want for the end user to hear. And that's one of the positives with an active speaker like the Navis, but this can also be seen as a caveat for those that like to tinker with different amplifiers because they can't do that here. For the Elac Navis, the tweeter is powered by a 40-watt Class AB amplifier, while the mid-range is driven by a 100-watt bash amplifier, and the bass driver is driven by a 160-watt bash amplifier. The Class AB amplifier for the tweeter I think was a smart choice as it appeals to audiophiles like myself that prefer a Class AB sound, especially in the upper frequencies. And I definitely think the Navis is one of the more open-sounding active speakers in its price category. Maybe not as articulate as the Focal Shape 65 active speakers I recently reviewed, but certainly open-sounding on the top end. Now, I won't go into it in this video, but if you're interested in a full-on comparison between the Focal Shape 65 speakers, which I thought was one of the best in its price and product category, and the Elac Navis, consider subscribing and clicking the bell notification so that you don't miss it. The bash amplifier is basically a hybrid between a Class AB and Class D amplification, where switching input stages drive the output stages of the Class AB amplifier. A benefit to a design like this is that it is more efficient than a Class AB design. It generates less heat than a Class AB design, and it doesn't need an output filter like a Class D amplifiers, which is arguably one of the downsides of a Class D amplifier. So anyways, the takeaway is that the bash amplifier is like kind of the best of both worlds. Now, one of the questions I get all the time about the Elac Navis is how it compares to other speakers like the KEF LS50 Wireless. And while the KEF LS50 Wireless is a great choice, it has a digital section that can't be exactly upgraded very easily. And this is a common thing with most speakers in this category. The Elac Navis is a unique speaker because it is an all-analog design with no digital section or digital processing. This means that you are not going to be limited by the digital processing built into the speaker, and you are not going to be finding any digital inputs like USB, optical, coax, and all that. but you will find an XLR and RCA analog inputs which you can use with your preamplifier or DAC. Personally, I like this because this means I can upgrade my preamp and DAC to improve my sound system. You want to add a tube preamplifier to make it sound more holographic and three-dimensional? You can do that with the Elac Navis. And also because I feel like digital does advance pretty fast, and having a fixed digital section only limits your upgradability down the line. The Elac Navis does have equalization adjustment for low frequency, where you can adjust it by -4 or +1 dB. And you have a mid-range adjustment for -1 or +1 dB, and a high frequency adjustment for -1 or +1 dB as well. So it's very important to note here that the switch here is not the only low frequency adjustment. It may be not so obvious, but the mid frequency and high frequency can be adjusted to get the result for the low frequency. So for example, if I increase the mid frequency and high frequency by +1 dB, then that equals -1 dB in the low frequency. So yes, you have some flexibility here in terms of adjusting the bass, and -4 dB and +1 dB is not the entire end of the story. But yes, also it's true that you don't get as much of a flexibility in comparison to other power speakers, for example, like the Focal Shape 65. I left most of the settings at 0 dB for the most part, but the only time I used the equalization was to set the low frequency to -4 dB setting when I was experimenting with real-life situations with the speakers really close to the wall or even on a desk. Because the Elac Navis is a rear-ported design, it did benefit from the EQ setting in real-life conditions where the listener don't get much choice other than to put it in front of a wall. But to be fair, the Elac Navis speakers are not all that hard to position. Like I said, the only thing that may be worth playing around with may be the distance from the front wall due to the port. You may also find benefit when you tilt them towards you a little bit more for that center imaging. But this limits sound staging, and I found the Elac Navis speakers are not that wide or deep in terms of sound staging. It's a bit more intimate, but imaging and ability to pick up the position of certain instruments or vocals within the soundstage given is very good. Also, you have a high pass filter which lets you set the crossover frequency with your subwoofer at 60 or 80 Hz. Although the Elac Navis has a pretty strong bass response, which is really more impressive because it sounds bigger than the physical size of the speakers would suggest. Really good impact, oomph to the sound, and seriously very, very well controlled bass. But I feel that it doesn't quite hit the low bass. Not that I miss it, but if you want to hear and feel the extension, that extra extension, then you do have the option to add a subwoofer with the Elac Navis. Now, there's a way to stream music wirelessly to the Elac Navis using Elac's Discovery Connect wireless streaming module. But we won't go into it in this review. Gordon explains that in his review, so please go read it if you're interested in that. The Elac Navis is built very well. It's honestly one of the most solid pieces I've seen, even compared to speakers costing several times more than the Elac Navis. The sound is pretty much the same way. You get a lot for your dollar spent, in my opinion. It is extremely good with microdynamics, and it can draw you in. It conveys music in an emotional way that just draws you in. It's very dynamic, as expected of Andrew's design. But what I like about the Elac Navis is its mid-range, which sounds pretty effortless and smooth, but it's not too soft or too laid back either. To my ears, it strikes a perfect balance. And like I said before, the highs are open sounding, especially for an active speaker at this price range, but it is again not too forward or too laid back, and I found it very comparable to speakers that cost much more, especially when you start adding amplifiers into the equation. So that's it from me, guys. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe and like the video, and I will see you guys on the next one.